Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters. So a little more ballot obsession.
Well, you have so many things
Maybe
here.
we'll sort of cut to the chase
Yeah.
with just a few of these little items here.
Did you want to talk about school committee?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit
We
here.
didn't mention that much.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you can also extract from ballot data is something that you really can't, you could never actually see during the regular election, which was how, if a person voted number one for a particular candidate, how did those voters rank their next favorite candidates, right? The only time you'd ever really get a hint of that is if somebody went way over quota and then there were a lot of ballots to give, because then they would be distributed more or less in those proportions.
Right.
But that was just sort of like a little subset of all, right? And for any candidate who never went over quota, you never saw what was behind the curtain,
because
that's true. It was those ballots just stayed with the number one choice, and those secondary preferences were never expressed whatsoever.
But actually, to that point, if it's not counted, do they still go through those ballots to see everyone's ballot, like what their second choice, third choice was? Wouldn't that be a useful thing?
It would be interesting, and I will say, unless I'm mistaken this, I believe in the original Planning Charter, Chapter 54A, which is what dictated this, it actually calls for doing that accounting.
Yeah.
And except for maybe a few exceptional cases where somebody actually took the time to do that, it wasn't really ever done.
Well, I think this was brought up on election night, or maybe, I forget. Why can't each ballot have every one of those recorded somewhere, and so that each voter's ballot is counted? And then you do the transfers. In other words, instead of this random count by what?
Oh, if you're talking about a fractional transfer, so in other words...
That would be a fractional transfer?
So a fractional transfer would basically be a system where you say, instead of doing the Cincinnati method, which is
the random...
select... It's not random, exactly, but it's like picking every nth ballot out.
Yeah.
And then assigning only those ballots get a second life in this second.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that.
Fractional transfer is... the problem with that system, what we use, is it is slightly dependent on ballot order.
Yeah.
And if you shuffled the ballots, you'd get slightly different results, which is a little disquieting for a lot of people.
So what's the fractional?
Fractional is where you actually you have to do with weights. So what you do is you basically say, okay, how much excess do you have? And you transfer every ballot to the next available choice, a fraction of it.
I think that's more fair. Why don't we do that?
It is more fair because you have to
home rule.
Change the law via home rule petition, and we just have never got around to doing it.
But it would be more fair, wouldn't it?
It would certainly be better in terms of things like recounts, because with a recount, all you would really have to do is just verify that the ballots were actually recorded correctly, and then you could pretty much hit the tabulation software and just run it through. And you could shuffle the ballots. You wouldn't have to worry about making sure they were in the correct order or anything like that.
Now, is that what they do in terms of electoral college in some states? Is that what they call it, where they actually don't just give all the votes but they take the proportion of that? I thought Colorado and Maine do that, no?
Well, the electoral college, almost all states, just if you win the state, you get
winner
all
takes
the
all.
electoral,
Right, but
the electoral votes.
Don't.
I think Maine and maybe
Colorado.
Is it Colorado?
I think so,
Any state could choose.
But isn't that more fair then?
I think it would be more fair.
So okay.
But the thing is that it's up to the states to decide.
Only wish.
Anyway, so we could do things with fractional transfers here, but we don't.
All right. So let's go to the school committee.
I did this for both city council and school committee, but it's kind of interesting that it's sort of more of an academic exercise. But for example, on the school committee, so we elected 6 individuals. There were 11 candidates. So. And 2 of them went slightly over, a bit over quota, right? It was Monica Bowman and then Emily Dexter, right? So you could see a little hint of that, but then how about all the others? So here's what the number 2 distributions look at for each of these here. I don't know how visible this is, but the thing is
that...
We could
go a little bigger.
Yeah.
And then we could...
Yeah, so one of the things that you see, for example, is behind Monica Bowman's number 1 ballots, how do the new number 2 votes distribute? And in fact, 30 some odd % of them would go to Emily Dexter, and then almost a third of that would go to Wilson, then Dawson, et cetera, et cetera.
That's interesting.
I mean, you can look at patterns within this. So, for example, is there racial identification? Is it just the power of incumbency? Does Emily Dexter do very well because she did very well in number 1s? right? So you would expect she would get a lot of number 2s as well.
Right, yeah.
Interestingly, if you look at Emily Dexter's ballots, behind all of her number 1s, the top choice is actually Monica Bowman.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's a close second going to Freddie Fantini before heading down through all of the others.
Yeah.
Right? Behind Aisha Wilson, you see it's Bowman on top, and then it kind of works on bullets.
What is bullets?
Bullets basically means they only voted for one candidate, and there is no second choice.
I see.
So everywhere that's referred to as bullet voting.
Okay.
Right? Somebody like Freddie Fantini, actually, most of his number 1s, I shouldn't say most, but the highest fraction, 25.2% of his ballots were just Freddie number 1, and that's it. That's actually that's how it's always been with Freddie, by the way.
Yeah.
A lot of just bullet votes for Freddie. I won't go through all the particulars here with Rachel Weinstein and Jose Luis Rojas Villarreal, but the thing is that when you get down to some of the the candidates who were elected a little bit later, there was actually a broad support sort of scattered around a number of candidates, and it's kind of hard to read what was happening there. I think. But it's kind of interesting to see. In other words, if there is such a thing as a Rachel Weinstein voter, right? Then what do those voters? How would they vote were it not for if Rachel wasn't the top candidate? You might say, well, the number 2 votes would probably be their second favorite choice.
Well, it's interesting. And Ruth Allen down here, hers go to Fred Fantini.
Right now, Ruthie is pure townie.
Right.
Ruthie's top second place finish behind is clearly Freddie Fantini.
Yeah.
Right? So so some of these things are what you would expect to see.
Sure, yeah.
But as I say, it's, in the absence of the ballot data, you just never be able to actually see this stuff.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'll just say here that what sometimes happens in subsequent elections, like 2 years later, candidates will often want to know, okay, well, how well did I do behind so-and-so? Because if such and such a candidate decides to not run, and a person did very well in their number 2s, they might say, well, maybe that's I should be running again, and maybe I can actually turn those 2s into 1s, right? So, so that's information that actually is useful. And in fact, that was part of the plan. I think when we first talked about getting access to ballot data back in 1997, the idea was, it would be good for sort of research and for planning campaigns and doing that stuff, and that's all seems fair game to me.
Now, have school committee candidates ever had slates?
Yes, in the days of the Cambridge Civic Association.
Okay.
In fact, one of the things I would say about that is that in the dying days of the CCA, when when the board, the CCA, because I was on it at the time, was actually questioning whether they should even be endorsing candidates anymore, because at that point, things had collapsed to the point where it was just kind of an empty formality. The candidates, and if my memory is correct, school committee ones as well as city councilors came to the board and said, no, we really would like it if you guys did some endorsements here, because we could really use the support of a slate. So the thing is so there was still, up until the very end, there was still some slate. And the CCA cared as much about school committee as they did about city council. That's not really been the case for most of the modern day slates. I mean, the Revolution group, they formally endorsed school committee candidates this time around, but that seems sort of like
Well, I think the whole demographics changed. You don't have as many families. It's just the schools are not.
But
it's important because we spend a lot of money there.
And I'll tell you though, in terms of voters educating themselves, parents with kids in the schools tend to educate themselves a lot about this stuff. And they are very interested in how to make those choices. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff you can get from the ballot data.
Which is all on his website.
Definitely. And I want to tell you something about who would replace the various candidates here. But I got to tell you something. Another thing that in the past, the way it works is that if you were to give a number 1 vote, or any ranking for that matter, to more than one candidate, the scanner should flag that, and you should be told, you've overvoted your ballot, and you may want to consider redoing it. If a voter insists on voting it that way anyway, it gets accepted. But the thing is, you have to give the voter a chance to correct it.
So do the new machines scan
They absolutely do that, and they flag them all. Another thing they can flag is what they call we call those horizontal overvotes, because you got all the candidates ranked down here, and if you give them all a 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, it's hard, it's vertical, right? But the thing is that some voters, and I guess they've always done it, but it's a relative rarity, is they might give their favorite candidate a 1, and then later on give them a 2 or a 5 or whatever, because maybe they just forgot.
Okay. I have a question. There were, because of the scanning took a while on the new machines, that they said, okay, give us your ballot and we will do it later because you have to get to work.
Right.
Well, what if there was a mistake on one of those?
Well, if there was
I'm wondering if these invalid ballots...
No, almost all the invalid ballots are blanks.
Okay, so...
Yeah.
But what are the chances of that happening? An overvote or...
Relatively low. I
Okay.
mean, almost all ballots are properly
Because you can't go back to the voter. It's all
No,
anonymous.
so you have to do it on faith. But the same thing is true for the provisional ballots and the overseas
Yeah, but
absentee
provisional...
ballots. You can't go back and have them... You can't mail it back to
provisional,
Germany
though, it's
and say,
provisional
"Do it."
when you first...
Right.
I mean, you're getting it because you're not registered in the right place. That's different.
But if you made a mistake on it, you would not be given an opportunity to correct it.
I don't know. I just hope that...
It's a relatively minor thing. I think it's kind of a nice luxury that we can offer. We can suggest to people that this ballot may not be counted in the way you intended, so we're giving you a chance to make sure it is.
Well,
right?
Yeah, but I just think but if there's any mistake, it's not going to be found where it would be if the machine kicked it out.
Right. But the thing is that what typically happens is that the ballots with errors or overvotes or whatever, or write-in candidates, many times these end up amongst the auxiliary ballots that are looked at on Wednesday.
So then they look at intent?
So
or
if to whatever degree the election commissioners can discern voter intent accurately, then that's how the ballot will be voted.
Thank God they weren't chats, right?
They weren't
Because that was, remember all the people looking up, is this
But
in or out?
this is sort of a funny, little bit of funny business, okay? I got to say this one because it was, to me, it was sort of like I was confused.
Yeah.
And then when I saw it, I said, okay, this is pretty funny.
Okay, what?
Okay, so, voters should basically give a 1 to a candidate, a number 2 to a different candidate, a number 3 to yet a different candidate, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes they give the same ranking to different candidates, but they could also give different rankings to one candidate, like a 1, a 2, and a 3. So I laughed when I saw it. By the way, in the past, the protocol was that when the memory cards were passed, to be turned into the files that were given to the tabulation software to actually do the count, there was a little minor cleanup so that if there were some vertical overvotes, so if you gave a candidate a 1 and then also a 3 and a 5, the 3s and the 5 would just be deleted.
So your 1 would
because
count.
they would never be counted anyway, and it's just going to confuse the issue. Well, for auditing purposes, they just leave them in now, and it doesn't affect the election at all, right? But what it means is when you get the ballot data, you get to see, for the first time, I'm actually seeing this sort of the oddballs like that.
Okay, but what if, in your example, what if somebody just put the red under the 1s, filled in the circles under the candidates, say like all under 1? Is that an invalid ballot then, because you can't determine what their 1 vote was?
If a voter gave, and there are some voters who do
this. Don't understand this. They just, I like this person, this person, this person. They don't see the numbers on the top.
If they give them all a 1, the ballot can't be credited to anybody because it's totally ambiguous.
Yeah. Okay.
So
learn about your PR and look at the top. It says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
This isn't hard stuff, right? This is pretty easy, right? Give a 1 to one candidate, number 2.
Well, you can't say give a 1. You have to circle under the 1 column.
Fill in the bubble. Don't circle
Fill in
anything.
the bubble.
Fill
Okay.
in the bubble.
All right.
Okay. So anyway, there was one ballot in Ward 7, Precinct 1.
Yeah. You found it.
and it was for Patty Nolan.
Yeah.
She got a kick out of this when I told her.
Yeah.
Where the voter ranked 9 candidates. Patty Nolan, 1 through 9.
Oh, wow. So that was probably on purpose.
I don't know, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
I think it was.
But it's funny because it only counts as a number 1 for Patty Nolan. That was it.
Yeah.
Right?
All right.
But it was kind of funny that they basically just, I don't know what statement
very
was
intentional.
being made. Maybe it was, but it was funny. But voters shouldn't do that because it's pointless. It doesn't count for anything other than comedy. Really,
although they did get their number 1. So.
Right, but that's all it was going to count for.
That's probably
anyway,
all they wanted.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So another thing was we were just mentioning the previous half hour is that if there should be a vacancy because somebody decides to take a job in Washington,
or something happens,
or they run for another office, or
whatever
they can no longer
corruption. I don't think that would happen.
That's right. I don't think so. Right, but they have to fill out their term, then you need to replace them. So how is that actually done? So here we go, folks. These are the replacements right here.
And you base this on the way you
So the way you do this
data.
is what you do is you actually take the ballots that elected Dennis Carlone, you run them through, and then the one person.
You see who the number.
Right, and now it's not surprising that the last person eliminated was Craig Kelly becomes the replacement.
Oh, so if Carlone
would be
wants
replaced
to go
by Kelly.
Okay, that's interesting.
And now you do see some of the slate dynamics play out in here. So, for example, Alana Mallon, if she should leave the office, would be replaced by Musgrave. Same thing with Mark McGovern, would be replaced by Musgrave. So these are all part of that ABC grouping.
Yeah.
Patty Nolan replaced by Kelly.
Look at that.
Right now, again, you shouldn't be
and
shocked.
Simmons replaced by Kelly. And Toomey replaced
Carlone
by
and Kelly were on the same slate.
Yeah.
Nolan and Kelly were on the same slate. Siddiqui and Musgrave are on the same slate.
So Kelly has four chances there.
And this is again yet another indication that incumbency is as much of a factor as the slates, and probably a lot more. So for somebody like Denise Simmons, it would not have been my first guess that her replacement would be Craig Kelly.
Right.
But in fact, that's exactly what.
So, but when that occurs anytime within the 2 years, if there's
That's right.
And if they're not available, it would go to the next on the list.
Then you basically have to exclude that candidate and run it, and then it would be all eligible candidates.
Interesting.
Right?
So let's look at the school.
Sabrina Wheeler also was on the ABC group. So and was kind of a different, new, younger replaced
he went to another different, new, younger.
Right?
Interesting.
Tim Toomey was on one slate, but his replacement would be Craig Kelly from the other slate, right?
Yeah.
Zondervan and Williams are on a similar slate, so I guess nobody should be particularly surprised at that replacement.
And that seems fair because the politics are sort of similar, and you want that.
I might have thought that Denise Simmons' replacement would be Nicola Williams, right?
Well,
but in fact,
not because of the whole issue. But it's Kelly who also was against. Yeah.
But it was so it's kind of hard to say what the.
I think it's familiarity. It's like he's an incumbent.
But that was really my primary point. Is that incumbency seems to outstrip all these other factors. Of course,
yes.
On the school committee, the 6 people elected, Bowman, Dexter, Fantini, Rojas, Villarreal, Rachel Weinstein, and Wilson, were replaced. Bowman by Burnett Dawson, Emily Dexter by David Weinstein, Freddie Fantini by Ruth Ryan Allen, again, Townie. Rojas Villarreal would be replaced by Alecha Cadete, Rachel Weinstein by David Weinstein.
I think they think that they're related, Right.
And Aisha Wilson by Burnett Dawson.
I voted for my school committee.
Yeah.
I think I voted for all of them.
So, anyway, it's interesting. It's purely academic because, in fact, there rarely are vacancies.
Right.
But the thing is it's yet another way of kind of giving a little bit of insight as to, what the voters who elected one person, how they might have elected or chosen the replacement if their ballots are allowed to speak for them.
Right.
And that's sort of how that plays out. So. Anyway, there were a few other little tests and things that I've run here, and I'll be doing some more as well. One of the things I often like to do, but I haven't done it yet, is to look for depth of support. So, for example, if you were a candidate who was listed 1, 2, or 3, right? So you were in a lot of top tier. And it's interesting because there are some candidates who did very good in number ones, but if you rank candidates based on how many times were they listed either 1 or 2 or 3, it gets all topsy-turvy.
Yeah.
So there are candidates who actually have a lot of support, but it doesn't get expressed as the number 1 support.
Right.
So if you do these other tests, you get different measures of popularity of candidates. And I haven't done that yet, but I'll certainly do it.
What I thought interesting when you talk about your candidate pages and how many... when you say not designated, what's the word you use? Unique visitors. Does that mean they're not someone going 3 times?
Exactly.
How do you know that?
That's all done by IP addresses.
Wow. I just was amazed. On election day, it was 11,000?
No, actually it was over 9,000 on election day.
On election day. What's the 11,000?
That was just in the few days leading up to and around election day.
I mean, it's good, but it's also, okay, I have to vote, and I don't know who to vote for. And in the election booth.
It's one of those...
On the cell phone.
It's really true. And it's... Ooh. I think candidates need to understand that, is that, you can throw all the literature, you can do mailings, you can do robocalls and whatever.
They're not going to pay attention to it. It all goes into the junk mail. I hate to say it. There's a lot of money spent on that.
We often get confused when we see the usual suspects who show up to meetings and you figure they already have decided everything. They know who all the candidates are. But there's a lot of voters out there. If there's 20,000 some
Well,
odd
they don't
voters,
follow things the way
they certainly don't,
right. And they just want
they
to
do wanna
vote. They want to exercise the right to vote, but they don't know who to vote for.
I think my personal feeling is that many people probably decide who their number one choice is
before
in the days before. So
but then with the ranking, they need to know.
But now they want to fill out their ballot, and they don't really know what to do. So they want to make sure that they, rank a few other candidates.
It was
and want to find out
also
about
interesting the days after, and I know my daughter was one of them because she looked up, that people want to find out, well, okay, who is this person?
Yeah,
that got elected.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right?
Yeah, so you start seeing a lot of hits post-election, like, well, who's this guy? I never heard of him.
Yeah. Oh, he's not so bad. I like his biography.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Everybody kind of doing this post-election analysis or post-election discovery. Sometimes I think is fair to say about them all. Anyway, so that was kind of an interesting thing. By the way, you got to do the election night broadcast. You were
I didn't do much of it. I just was right? I mean, it'd be interesting what people. My personal feeling about it was good. I think next year 3 people doesn't work, and I think you and Suzanne do a great job. But if each of you then hosted a guest, just like Alice Wolf was with I forget who.
Irene Monroe.
Yeah, but it was too much,
Yeah, I mean it was interesting. It was kind of nice. I got to walk around some.
Yeah, but I think every other, because she had no break as far as I could see. You were out there for an
That's
hour.
True. That's true.
So I just that's not discussion here, but I just think
we were pretty good at not trying to beat up the city manager, whatever.
That's the segment I was on. That was good.
I was a little bothered by the kind of the opinion going that happened in some of the subsequent settings from, Alice Wolf and
Alice was very hot. She was very concerned about, sort of maybe pointing fingers over there about her thing about, she didn't understand why, maybe she's talked to you about that, why labor unions had to be pointed out in the tablet,
I basically anybody who was putting a lot of money in toward
right, but you had the real estate and then labor union, and she said that labor unions were her best support, and when she ran, and that
but if you look at the numbers, what you see is that
I don't think they were as much as the
unions were basically pouring. But it was a significant amount of money. Actually, if I had my druthers in all of this and could redo it, I might actually, because you could also identify people who had business before the council in the cannabis question.
Oh yeah.
And they were dumping piles of money on some candidates as well.
Well, where would that have been recorded though? They're not real estate, and they're not.
I didn't publish it. I didn't publish it, but the thing is, I was certainly keeping track of it.
But how did you know? Because of the names, you knew?
Yeah, you know who the players are.
Well, I think that's interesting. I think next time you should track it.
You should, but the thing is right now, actually, City Council had a subcommittee meeting on government operations. They were actually addressing the issue of lobbyists. Right. And what should there be limitations on it? So in Boston, apparently,
Boston, they passed something
some rule that basically said if you're going to contribute to Boston City Council campaigns and you're a lobbyist, you need to register. It doesn't tell you can't contribute.
But what defines a lobbyist? Someone that advocates for something?
I'm not in any way going to sugarcoat it and say that this is like an easy thing to decide. In fact, I think that there are legal questions that you could run into if you try and do the limitations. So to me, my feeling about it is that you just go for maximum disclosure, and you don't try and do limitations other than voluntary caps on how much money you raise or spend.
I think that's where
we
should go. Voluntary cap. So if you go over that, people will know it. And I don't care where it but it's.
But the thing is, I was actually putting out the numbers to see how much money people were raising and spending, so that if somebody wanted to look at that and say, well, this person's spending over $80,000 or whatever, that people would say, well, what's going on here? I think I'd rather support somebody who's not one of the rich guys,
Yeah.
And then let the voters decide. To me, it all should be about disclosure. It shouldn't be about judging. You just say, okay, look.
Well, it was there. You disclosed it all the weeks and months ahead, and I
at no point did I ever suggest
the people still were elected.
There were some candidates who were using words like corruption. I didn't think that was fair. This is all about disclosure, and if somebody's misbehaving as a result of it, well, let a voter decide that. That's not for me to decide.
Well, I guess the voters didn't care.
I didn't think they cared that much, but again, the way you got to look at these elections is that some voters care, and it will guide their decisions. Other voters care about other things, and then other factors will guide their decisions. So it's really just about putting as much information out as people might be interested in finding out about. So, I'm still doing that. One thing that's kind of interesting, now I'm putting out the dollars per number one vote totals, making those available. That no, it's on there. It's in one of the pages on the bank reports.
Oh, okay.
And and some of them are kind of embarrassing. If somebody's paying over $50 for number one vote. And the numbers aren't even all in because honestly, the expenses are still being recorded. So you really have to wait till the end of the year before you get a really full sense of how much money people actually raise and actually spend. I'll tell you something that I actually find disturbing, and I see it every 2 years. There are some candidates who get like big money from some serious players, real estate players to be sure, and they don't record them until after Election Day.
Is that legal?
Yes, it's legal.
Oh. Well, they don't want to be seen.
I know. But the thing is what's the point of disclosure if you can't disclose prior to Election Day, right? So, anyway, the wall will shape up. At the very least, if people are going to talk about what is going to constitute reasonable amounts of donations and expenditures, then by doing all this recording this time around, people will have at least a sense of the scale of what people need to raise if you want to be a candidate, or what can be considered reasonably excessive.
I think you should use free media like candidate pages,
right?
And less mailings. Really go to the forums. You don't have to pay for that. And then social media. Right. I just feel like it's ridiculous. All that paper and postage and oof. Yeah.
So. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Okay. I think maybe there's some will to do something in the next session on campaign finance reform, but I don't expect it to be particularly earth-shattering, and there won't be any real limitations.
So next week there is a city council meeting? It'll probably not be.
There is. So
and then Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week then.
See you next week on Cambridge Inside Out.
Bye.